Yeah, thanks. All right, I think we have a quorum, so let's get started. We're going to go a little out of order with our Howard County bills. Howard County 1440, Delegate Watson, and then we'll roll through all three of them.
Good morning, Chair and members of Appropriations. Courtney Watson, representing the Howard County delegation, presenting HB 1440, which is simply about the Howard County Public Schools and differences in capital budget proposals. And the bill requires the county board to publish the differences that they make in the superintendent's proposed capital budget to their final budget.
House Bill 1442, Delegate Watson.
Again, I'm representing the Howard County delegation. This is simply a work group to study the fiscal and operational viability of public-private partnerships for Howard County Public Schools.
Okay, that concludes the bill hearing. House Bill 1450.
This is a Howard County delegation bill that is a task force to study revenue options for school capital needs.
Any questions from the committee? Concludes the bill hearing. Thanks, Delegate Watson.
Thank you.
Moving on to House Bill 407, Delegate Kaufman. Delegate, if you have a panel, you can bring them up. If you don't, that's okay.
Yeah, I do have. Come on up, guys. I will sit you right there with me. No, I need the chair, sir. I'm gonna get it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And before I begin, I just want to say, committee cultures are different. At judiciary, we have a ton of witnesses, but based on the last bill hearing, I got some negative feedback on the number of witnesses. So I did my very best to pare it down. But good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and my esteemed colleagues. For the record, my name is Delegate Aaron Kaufman, representing District 18. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of HB 407, the SNAP for Students Act. I'm grateful to the numerous members of the Appropriations Committee that are co-sponsors of this legislation, including the chair of the relevant subcommittee, the Health and Social Services Subcommittee, Delegate Emily Shetty. This bill would allow college students enrolled in at least 15 credit hours per year to be permanently eligible for SNAP benefits if they qualify for a federal or state-sponsored work study, or if they have an expected family contribution of $0 during the academic year. And that means they're paying for college themselves. SNAP eligibility for college students was temporarily expanded during the pandemic by the federal government, but expired after the COVID-19 public health emergency, which ended on May 11th, 2023. The pandemic may be over, colleagues, but food insecurity remains a pressing issue, which is why permanently expanding eligibility for SNAP benefits, which is what Delegate Solomon tried to do, and now I'm trying to do, it is vital to support the pursuit of higher education and the overall well-being of students. It is important to note that there are two categories of food insecurity: marginal food insecurity, which is categorized by a lack of dietary quality and variety, and food insecurity, which refers to those who skip meals and eat less than they should due to an inability to afford food. In our state, an extraordinary number of college students experience various degrees of food insecurity. For example, Mr. Chair, at the University of Maryland, 20% of students are food insecure, and another 21 face marginal food security levels. And all of these data that I'm going to cite today is cited thanks to my incredible intern, Lily Rainey, and Sari, my chief of staff, who drafted this testament. Additionally, at Towson University, Delegate Forbes, an estimated 1 in 4 students are experiencing some form of food insecurity. Unfortunately, this is not a new issue. Even before the pandemic, colleagues, around 100,000 Maryland college students were struggling to afford food. According to the Hope Center, 4 million college students are food insecure, while another 2.3 million are marginally food insecure nationwide. This issue propagates unacceptable racial inequalities as minority groups are impacted to a higher degree. Specifically, more than a third of Black or African American college students are food insecure, and 35% of LGBTQ plus students report inadequate access to food. Food insecurity can have detrimental impacts on education. Research from Johns Hopkins states that students are 40% less likely to graduate if they face food insecurity. Students lacking basic necessities have worsened mental health, lower GPAs, and often struggle to concentrate in class. This leads to a higher dropout rate and a lower percentage of those students pursuing graduate degrees. Currently, college students are eligible for SNAP benefits if they meet certain requirements, such as working 20 hours a week or participating in a work study instead of simply qualifying for it. HB 407 loosens the requirements to allow students to focus on their education and not starve as a consequence. As you know, Mr. Chair, this is a year when much of the state budget is devoted to education, and I believe HB 407 aligns with those priorities. I know that the fiscal note is high, but I leave it to the committee to make necessary adjustments so the legislation can move forward this year. After all, empty stomachs, colleagues, are indifferent to whether there is a budget surplus or a budget deficit. I consider the budget to be a moral document and believe that fighting food insecurity and to ensure that every Maryland citizen has access to food should be a priority. The Maryland Higher Education Commission expects enrollment in higher education to increase in the coming years. For example, the University of Maryland is projected to increase enrollment by 11% over 5 years, according to MHEC. Heightened enrollment will inevitably increase the amount of students in need of expanded SNAP benefits. To safeguard the future of higher education in Maryland, I urge a favorable report on House Bill 407, as it is our duty to take a stand for local college students who are struggling. Thank you, and I will gladly take any questions.
You're welcome to delegate.
Yes.
Hear from your panel. Welcome.
Thank you. Do you want to go first?
Thank you, Chairman Barnes, and delegates. My name is Tessa Cohn. I am an undergrad student at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. I am currently the social work intern at Retrievers Essentials, which is the free food program on campus. I connect food insecure students with resources on and off campus, including SNAP. I want to tell you about 2 students who recently came to Retrievers Essentials for support, and their stories are not unique or one in a million. We see a variety of students in similar situations with similar experiences. Student number 1, John Doe, who built up the courage to tell his parents that he is gay. They responded by kicking him out of their house and cutting off all financial support. He was desperately looking for a job while homeless. The second student, Jane Doe, was on financial aid and taking a full course load and didn't have the time or energy for a part-time job. Both of these students were not eligible for SNAP due to the employment requirement. Homeless students and students taking an overload of courses to minimize student loan debt are not eligible for food assistance through SNAP. I'm sick of telling students that there's little I can do for them beyond a referral to a food pantry. I need you to understand that the work requirement makes SNAP inaccessible to many food insecure students. Research has shown that food insecurity is twice as prevalent among college students as the general public. This is due to the high cost of living and tuition, as well as the amount of time and energy students must invest to be academically successful. Expecting full-time students to be employed 20 hours a week is completely unrealistic. A full-time student would have a 65-hour work week. How can we expect students to focus on their education when they can't meet their basic needs? We should be encouraging and empowering students to finish their degrees so that they do not get caught in the cycle of poverty. Passing House Bill 0407 will ensure that students who are food insecure get access to the resources they need, and that students are able to focus on their education rather than worrying about their next meal or how long they can go without eating.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us. Thanks for the work you do in your testimony. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Chairman Barnes, Vice Chairman Chang, and members of the Appropriations Committee. Thank you, Delegate Kaufman, and for you and the many co-sponsors for introducing House Bill 407. My name is Andrea Kalfuglu, and I'm an Associate Professor of Public Health at UMBC. I'm here representing the Maryland Public Health Association and as a member of the Advisory Board to Retriever Essentials. My students at UMBC are low income, first-generation college attenders from historically marginalized groups, and even come out of the foster care system. Imagine what a college degree means for these students. 25% of UMBC students qualify for a Pell Grant. That means they have exceptional financial need. In the 70s, a Pell Grant covered 80% of the cost of tuition or cost of college. Today, that's 30%. 1 in 3 college students are now experiencing food insecurity. My research found that food pantries, volunteer food pantries, now exist on virtually all of Maryland's public colleges and universities. Hunger tends to be invisible and it can be very isolating, and because it's so stigmatizing. Hungry students are unable to concentrate, have lower GPAs, and are much more likely to drop out of school. While SNAP is not perfect, it puts cash in the hands of hungry students. Unfortunately, this employment requirement prevents many students from qualifying. DHS and MHEC estimate that approximately 33,000 students may be eligible to receive state SNAP benefits under this bill. To give you a sense of that number of students, this would nearly fill the stadium at the Naval Academy. Please bring House Bill 407 to a vote this week so it can be considered by the Senate this session. Maryland students can't wait.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your testimony and the work you do. Are there any questions for the panel? Okay,
I
thank
think
you all
there's
so
one other
much.
person. I think there's one more
We
person.
do. Oh, Woody. Oh, yeah, it's didn't see over there. Woody Kessel.
Yes.
So
thank
welcome,
you.
Mr. Kessel. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Chairman Barnes and Vice Chair Chang, and certainly members of the Appropriation Committee. You've heard some excellent testimony, certainly from Delegate Kaufman and the sponsor of this critically important piece of legislation. You know, I'm a pediatrician, I'm a professor of public health, and I'm here testifying on behalf of 3 progressive congregations in Maryland, but I'm really here for my students. I've seen this clinically, how food insecurity can affect the growth, the development of children, but I've seen it in the classroom. I've seen it with kids struggling. My goal is to help these kids learn, and they need every necessary tool to be able to learn. You've heard a number of the statistics, but it's critical to come to class having not been hungry, not sitting there when your next meal is gonna have. It affects the brain, it affects your body, it affects the whole tone and temperament of your approach to learning and education. And there's a real opportunity for this legislature to pass something to help kids and to secure the investment we're making at the University of Maryland to educate young people and to help them grow to become good and productive citizens. We certainly support HB 407, SNAP for students, because it's just makes good sense. It's good science, it's good economics, and it's a good investment in our young people. So we urge you to support this bill, SNAP for students. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank the committee for considering a favorable report.
Any questions for any of the members of the panel?
No. Okay.
Okay, I do have a virtual witness, but thank you all for being with us today. Great day. Do we have a virtual witness, Jaden Ferris? Okay, let's put him on. Jaden, are you with us? You on?
Yeah, she's coming.
Okay, welcome, Jaden. We can see you and you have 2 minutes.
Sorry about that. Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Ching, and members of the Appropriation Committee. I am Jaden Ferris. I serve as the Director of Government Affairs for the University of Maryland, Baltimore County Student Government Association and unequivocal support of House Bill 407. Imagine a young college student, eager to learn, having to choose between paying tuition or buying food. This is the unfortunate reality for 1 in 3 first-year college students. Hunger doesn't just rumble their stomachs, it eats at their dreams. House Bill 407 is a lifeline. We can transform empty cupboards into opportunities by passing this legislation. Nutritious meals are more than just physical health. They fuel focus, boost energy, and alleviate the stress that clouds a student's abilities to succeed. Think of the countless bright minds on the brink of dropping out because basic needs are competing with academic aspirations. House Bill 407 will bridge this gap, especially for first-generation college students who often lack a safety net. Let's not let empty stomachs steal futures. Investing in this bill is an investment in every student's potential to learn, thrive, and contribute to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your great testimony today and being with us. Any questions for Mr. Ferris? Okay, thank you, sir. Thanks for being with us. That concludes the bill hearing. Move on to House Bill 1389. I think Delegate Lehman is with us. Welcome. Do you have
Interested a lot of people. I'm only bringing up one panelist with me.
okay, we'll bring a panel and then I'll call the others
Yeah,
after the panel.
Coach Larson, who serves with the, or serves the Baltimore City Police
County.
and Fire Departments.
County.
County, I'm sorry, Baltimore County, Police and Fire Departments. Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and esteemed Appropriations Committee members. For the record, I'm Delegate Mary Lehman, and I am here asking for your favorable report for House Bill 1389. This bill, as amended, will provide for death and disability benefits for Maryland public safety personnel who die by suicide or are permanently disabled due to job-related post-traumatic stress disorder or other mental health conditions. HB 1389 amends the Maryland Public Safety article to make its death and disability benefits for work-related trauma match provisions in federal law that Congress passed and President Biden signed in August of 2022. The impetus for this federal law was the trauma experienced by police officers who defended the U.S. Capitol during the insurrection of January 6th. 4 of those officers subsequently died by suicide. This bill would extend death and disability benefits to personnel covered by this law or their beneficiaries in the case of death. Covered personnel include law enforcement officers, correctional officers, volunteer or career firefighters and rescue squad members, public safety aviation employees, and also Afghanistan and Iraq war veterans who served during specified dates. So we know that first responders experience significant stress. Research has found that they are more susceptible to a range of mental health and substance abuse problems, including suicide, depression, alcoholism, and drug abuse. An April 2021 study by the Centers for Disease Control entitled Suicide Among First Responders, a Call to Action, confirmed that occupational stress in first responders can be associated with an increased risk of serious mental health issues, including hopelessness, anxiety, depression, PTSD, suicidal ideation, and actual attempted suicide. According to a U.S. Department of Health supplement in the Help for Our Heroes program, 30% of firefighters, police officers, and EMS professionals develop behavioral health conditions, including but not limited to depression and PTSD, compared to only 20% in the general population. Among law enforcement, estimates suggest between 125 and 300 police officers die every year by suicide. The stigma of mental illness has added to the suffering of too many people for too long. For first responders and others who keep us safe from harm, I believe it is our responsibility to recognize that job-related trauma makes these professionals highly susceptible to mental and emotional harm, including self-harm. Please vote to extend disability and death benefits to these Maryland men and women and provide them the coverage they and their survivors deserve. I thank you, and I ask for a favorable report.
Chairman Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to be here. I am Hope Larson. I am a board certified trauma counselor. I am a certified mental health coach and a member of the American Academy of Experts on Traumatic Stress. For the last several years, I've had the privilege of working as a chaplain with the Maryland Fire Chiefs Association, as a chaplain with the Baltimore County Police Department, as a member of their peer support team, and the same with the Baltimore County Fire Department. This bill should not be underestimated, nor should the benefits that it contained be understated. We talk about PTSD, and the amendment part of this bill for disability is huge. The American Association, the APA, designates treatment for any post-traumatic injury as PTSD, as a post-traumatic stress disorder. That comes from what our first responders experience as post-traumatic injuries on the job every day. It is a cumulative buildup. And just like if you have an injury that occurs and you don't treat that injury, it gets worse. This bill allows for our first responders to get the treatment for those injuries so that it is not a life sentence. Just like a superhero, they don't get to put a cape on and take it off when they go home. They are human beings doing super heroic things every day. As a human being, they go and do a heroic thing and they go home. They have post-traumatic stress injuries, and we need to provide the support so that they can get the resources to heal from those injuries. If we brought a burn victim in here today, you could see that injury. And I believe that every person sitting in this room would want them to get every available option medically to be treated for that injury to return them to whole. We should do the same for these post-traumatic injuries that they experience. I get called on the worst of the worst calls, and I can't tell you what all of them were, what their names were, but I will never forget the suicides of the first responders that I've worked with. Because we could do more, we should do more. I'm happy to speak with any of you more about this to ensure that you will vote to pass this bill. Thank you for your vote. Thank you for caring.
Any questions for the bill sponsor, Delegate Solomon?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate Lehman, thank you for bringing this bill and thank you for sharing your testimony. Just a quick question. Are there any other jurisdictions or states that offer this kind of benefit or protection?
There are. I actually do some work with the South Carolina Law Enforcement Association, and they have several different benefit programs. There are 9 states that are following the South Carolina program, and there is a lot more that we can do. And I'm so happy to see Maryland taking those steps.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for the question.
Okay, we have a number of other witnesses. You're welcome to stay, Delegate. Clyde Boatwright, Clyde, Sarah Laird, Gordon Wallace, and then I have 2 more after that. And whoever's at the table can start testifying. Well,
good afternoon. My name is Janet Demerit. I'm the volunteer fire chief of Prince George's County Volunteer Marine Fire and Rescue. I'd like to thank Chairman Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, the committee, and especially Mary Lehman. This is a most important bill, and I appreciate the opportunity to testify favorably for it, along with the amendments. A little difficult. I had a long time, very committed volunteer firefighter. He was one of my most committed officers. He committed suicide. I pleaded with him and stayed on the phone with him and was less than a minute away when the phone call dropped and I arrived too late. We had nothing in place for him before the event. We had nothing in place during the event or after the event for his family, for my department, or for myself. This is huge as the rings of survival guilt, it just expands further and further within a department and to that family member. It affects us all, career volunteer. If there had been something like this bill in place, Marty might be here today, but there was nothing. So as volunteers, they come from all walks of life and have varying insurance plans. So there's so many that couldn't just reach out for mental health care. Some could, but some could not. So I will beg you to please move forward with this because it's one of the most important things I've seen for all of us. Thank you.
Appreciate you telling the story here with us today. Clyde, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Clyde Boatwright, and I'm the president of the Maryland State Fraternal Order Police, representing over 21,000 active police officers across the state. We share the sentiments of our brothers and sisters in fire, that this bill will be beneficial to our profession. With the short time that I have left, I'm going to share with you a story, a personal story from an encounter. As police officers, we get to choose our profession, but sadly, we don't get to choose the calls that we go on. As a young police officer, I responded to a call for a missing child at a local elementary school. This child was special needs, and he had walked away from his one-on-one aide. So we searched and was driving around the campus, looking, or the community looking for this young person, and we couldn't find him. We tried to go back to his home. We figured that he probably walked back home. Couldn't find him. So suddenly there was a call from a local community member that there was a child face down in a pool. We responded to the call, and there was our young person in the pool. So there were efforts to resuscitate him by my partners and school staff members. And I was tasked with the responsibility of following the AMBO to the hospital. When we got to St. Agnes Hospital, I was standing there as the doctors were working on the young person. And then out of nowhere, there was this young woman that walked up to me, and she got into my personal space and she says, "Hi, I'm the hospital chaplain." And the doctors felt as though you needed to talk to somebody. Now, I didn't know that I was exhibiting those signs because, again, as they say, PTSD, it's not like a burn victim where you can outwardly see it. And so with my time that I have left, wrapping it up, I just want to urge a favorable report. And so our police officers and firefighters can get the help they need.
Representing police and fire for the committee, that pretty much every firefighter and police officer has a story like that to tell. And so thank you so much for your service and what you do for us. We appreciate it.
Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, members of the committee. My name is Sarah Laird. My husband, Battalion Chief Josh Laird, was killed in a fire caused by failure of corrugated stainless steel tubing under lightning strike conditions on August 11th, 2021 in Frederick County, Maryland. A few days after his death, I asked Chief Coe to send a message to the entire department asking them to seek professional help if they were struggling with Josh's death, as I couldn't face another loss. Unfortunately, 3 months to the day after my husband's death, on November 11th, 2021, firefighter David Esposito took his own life. David had been stationed with my husband. This is not an uncommon story, as first responders spend as much of their time with their partners and shift mates as they do with their families. First responders see us on our worst days. They see and experience the most horrific and unimaginable parts of humanity, and then they get up and return to work to do it all over again. These repeated traumatic events leave wounds that aren't visible to the eye, and sometimes even with medical care, these wounds don't heal. There is no doubt that David's death was very different than my husband's. However, they were both a direct result of their job. Now I sit on the other side, attending grief groups with other first responder widows, yet we have significant differences. Some of us are supported and some of us are not. The failure to recognize first responder suicide as causal to their job is a tremendous injustice. Science tells us that the irregular sleep schedules that first responders endure alone results in PTSD. The surviving family members made significant sacrifices even before their loved ones died. Yet during their darkest time of their lives, after they've watched their loved one battle an invisible disease, they are left out in the cold to grieve without the acknowledgement that their loved one served with honor and were not weak but broken. The federal government has already taken action to end this injustice. I ask that Maryland takes action and you provide a favorable report for HB 1389.
With us today. It's important that you share your story with us, so thank you. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gordon Wallace, and I'm the legislative representative for the Maryland Metropolitan Fire Chiefs Council. I'm also a career chief officer in a regional fire department with 34 years of service. I'd like to thank Chairman Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and the entire committee for your time today. House Bill 1389 seeks to recognize the unique mental health challenges faced by first responders by providing a suicide and disability benefit for those who suffer from service-related PTSD. We are in support of House Bill 1389 as amended, as the inclusion of a suicide and disability benefit for these individuals recognizes the unique and significant mental health challenges they face as a result of their selfless dedication to protecting our communities. First responders are frequently exposed to traumatic and distressing experiences such as devastating accidents, fires, and loss of life. These experiences can have a profound impact on their mental health and can lead to PTSD, anxiety, and depression. The toll of these psychological injuries can be devastating, resulting in a tragically high rate of suicide and disability amongst first responders. By providing these benefits for firefighters that have suffered from PTSD, House Bill 1389 acknowledges the sacrifices and hardships that firefighters endure as part of their service and provides the necessary support to help their families in the aftermath of a service-related suicide or disablement. This bill is not just about providing financial assistance. It is a statement of our commitment to the well-being of our first responders statewide. It recognizes their mental health struggles as legitimate and deserving of support. And it sends a message that we value and honor their service and sacrifice. Ultimately, this bill is a crucial step in addressing the mental health crisis within the public service community. It is for those reasons we ask for a favorable report from this committee. I'd also like to leave you with 4 nicknames: Mick, Maynard, Poon, and Droopy. 4 firefighter colleagues of mine and friends from a long time ago. They suffered from physical and mental health issues related to the job, and they all took their own lives. We in the fire service see the worst of things every day, and we have thick skins, but we are not made of steel, and we do not have much mental armor. I thank you all for your time.
Questions for the panel? We have 2 more witnesses, but thank you all for being with us.
Thank you.
Thanks for your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and esteemed council committee. My name is Grant Walker. I'm the president of the Prince George's County Professional Firefighters and Paramedics Association, IFF Local 1619, and the first district representative of the Professional Firefighters of Maryland, representing Howard, Montgomery, Prince George's, Charles, Calvert, and St. Mary's counties. I've been a firefighter in the state of Maryland for 20 years. When I started my career in the fire service, the things that we focused on were vehicle accidents and cardiac arrests on the fire ground. Over the last 10 years, I've seen a dynamic shift into focusing on cancer prevention and the deaths that are caused by cancer and PTSD. Much like the military, PTSD and the behavioral impacts of the job that we do were neglected, oftentimes told to suck it up, be tougher. Over the last 10 years, we've seen a dramatic increase in the awareness and the preparation for the mental rigors of the course of duty that our firefighters exposed to every day. We take a lot of effort to prevent a lot of these issues, but sometimes they're inevitable. In 2023, the International Association of Firefighters did a combust study where they surveyed firefighters from across the nation. 26.3% of respondents from Maryland met preliminary screening for PTSD. 26.2% met preliminary screening for depression. 39.2% of respondents from Maryland had a history of suicidal ideation or intent. Those numbers alone should ask you to move this bill and to make sure that our firefighters and our law enforcement officers are protected in the awful event that they may develop PTSD or even worse, take their own life, so that their family members are taken care of when they take their own. It's with that I ask for a favorable report on 1389. Thank you.
My name is Michael Burke, District 10.
I come from a long collection of the hats that have been in the panel before me. I'm retired military, 21 years of service. I'm retired federal law enforcement, over 20 years of service. I've been actually working as a volunteer firefighter since I was 14. They didn't check ID back then. And the first fire that I got a call for, I got on my bike and went, and I was 6 foot tall. Nobody checked, nobody cared, and I worked the fire. And I've been in firefighting since that age. I've also been wearing a EMT hat, firefighter, paramedic, etc., for most of my career. I'm also the Maryland coordinator for the National Association of EMTs here in Maryland. 80% of the firefighters and EMTs who roll out each day when you hear a siren in your neighborhood here in Annapolis or back in your communities are volunteers. They don't get paid to answer the call. They don't get paid to roll up on that scene. They don't get paid to handle the dead body of a child brought out of a wrecked building or a car or other scenes that we've seen, and you've heard some of the stories. They do it because they care about the community, about their neighbors, about each other. Down the street, you've driven by it coming in and out of Annapolis every day during your session. There's a memorial on Calvert Street, firefighters and rescue service. Doesn't mention EMTs, but they're in that, they're included. I ask you to take a stop on your way out tonight and remember those who came before us, who fell in the line of duty. But those who fell in their living rooms or driving into a bridge or in a bottle of pharmaceuticals, they fell too, but they weren't counted as line of duty deaths. They were just seen as people who succumbed to weakness. And we need to change that mentality in our management. And we start here in Annapolis by changing it in law. We need to recognize that the casualties of the stress that we face, our brothers and sisters, our fathers, our children, who will follow me, I hope. They need this support. They need to know that you, the General Assembly, the House and Senate, chairman, delegates, vice chair, will stand for them on the floor when this bill comes to vote. We also need to remember our dispatchers. You have another bill coming, 1313. They face the same issues. They hear the calls. They hear the crying children, the mother, someone who's calling with their worst day in their lives. And those dispatchers are not included in this bill. So I'd ask for a small amendment to include them because they face the same stresses. And I've been to some of their funerals because that line of duty death, they didn't make the memorial. They didn't get the pension because the systems did not recognize that their injuries from just being on the phone didn't count as a line of duty issue. I'd ask you to remember, again, diversity, equity, and inclusion. We've heard that across the state. We've heard that lately. This recognizes diversity. This recognizes equity. And this includes them.
Yep.
In
Thank you so much for your
coverage.
testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service and testifying with us today. Any questions for this panel? Delia Ruff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question, and thank you for your service. Based on your talking about the dispatchers, would you be a proponent of extending this to folks in state's attorney's offices, things of that nature?
That's a call for you, delegate, and the rest of the committee. State's attorneys don't get to crime scenes. State's attorneys don't come out on the street, but they read the paperwork, they read the reports, they see the photos.
They talk to the witnesses.
Yes, they deal with the
And the
aftermath.
victims.
And so I appreciate your including them in the conversation because, again,
Would you then extend that to public defenders as well?
I can't answer for a group I don't know, but again, I would appreciate your inclusion of our brothers and sisters in the Bar Association who also deal with the aftermath.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for both of you, and I probably should have asked it from the other folks, but do you feel that there is in other words, I'm kind of on the prevention side as opposed to they've passed. And one concern I have is that might make them feel a little better if they pass because they're in such problem. And then there's death benefits that go to the survivors. That's just, because you don't know how they're thinking. My thought is, are there good enough programs for folks that if there's a critical incident and it's really bad, that you have people that can go right in at that time and start working with the folks that saw the problem or the disaster that's so horrifying. Because it seems like, and then you can kind of better identify, that's what I'm thinking, who really needs the intensive care. So if you'd like to comment on that, I appreciate it.
Thank you for your question, Delegate. To give you some awareness, Prince George's County has one of the most robust peer support programs in the nation. For a long time in the fire service, the critical incident stress management model was how our fire and EMS departments and a lot of police departments handle these types of incidents. What research has shown is actually that CISM is actually a detriment to our first responders. Like the law enforcement officer that spoke earlier, having someone in your face right after one of these types of incidents can be very detrimental to the healing process for someone's behavioral and mental health. So in Prince George's County, we have the second largest peer support trained peer support team in the nation, only behind the FDNY. And this state legislature has put a number of bills in place to protect the confidentiality of those peer support programs. I know that the Maryland Institute of Emergency Medical Systems and the IFF have been partnering over the last few years to develop and make sure that there are programs statewide to ensure that those resources are available for our first responders, because ultimately you are correct. Prevention is a huge part of this. Getting to someone while they're in EMT school or fire school is very important to make sure that their mental resiliency exists for the entire time of their career. However, there are times where it doesn't matter how much resource we pour into our first responders. Sometimes the burden of what they've seen and experienced in their life is just too much for them to bear. The federal government saw fit to include this in the PSOB benefits. That's where this language comes from, the Public Safety Officer Benefit Program. That's a national benefit program specific for PTSD and suicide that was led to from PTSD. There's no fear, I think, of glorifying suicide. This is not something that I think someone makes with a lightness and looks forward to getting those benefits. I think that if someone's made a decision to take their own life, that's one that's weighty, and the benefits are probably the last thing that is on their mind.
CISM does work. And to elaborate on your question, we all remember Jimmy's, not who is it? Anyway, a gentleman standing on a bridge wondering whether he'd be worth more dead than alive. And a whole movie about that. Dealing with stress. That actor himself was dealing with post-traumatic stress from his service in World War II when he filmed that movie. So he was not acting, he was remembering. We do a far better job in Maryland than most other states across the country. MIMS and MIFRI now incorporate that training and that expertise and stress management in the front. Our chaplains and our managers across the systems in law enforcement, in fire service, and EMS do a much, much better job today than when I came in decades ago and was told, tough it up, buttercup, we'll go down to the bar and get drunk and forget about it and hope we can make it back for the next shift. So we do need to work on prevention, and we're already doing that. But this bill would address those people who are left out. The ones who fail, because we can't just bring everybody into a debrief after every call. Then you wouldn't have anybody to answer the next call, because that next call is only 12 seconds away. Because most of us in these past few panels have been there where we're sitting writing a report and go like, 413, are you available? We got another one. And we have to go right back out. We don't get to decompress. Some stations, we work on a 24-hour schedule and where you're in the station or you're on the road for 24 straight. And then you get a day or 2 or 3 off. It depends. And other stations in law enforcement may work a 10-hour shift or an 8-hour shift. And then you're on your own because you check out, you don't even do a debrief. There is no Hill Street Blues roll call to catch you at the end of the day. Hey guys, how are you doing? How is everything today? Because there just isn't time in the universe for that to happen. But this bill helps fill that gap for those people who, again, who fail and succumb to cumulative injuries from 1,000 calls, but don't have the ability to pick up the phone and say, I'm bleeding, I need help. We've all been on scenes where guys have visible injuries. You want to get treated? No, I'll take care of it after shift. Because they don't want to stop doing what they do. Most police officers, most firefighters, most EMTs, most of the others in this panoply that we discussed do it because they love the job. They do it because they love being able to walk up to someone having that worst day and making a difference. That's what we do. That's why we signed up. That's why we roll on each call with alacrity. But this would help. And if it doesn't help our brothers and sisters, it at least helps the children, the spouse left behind when somebody makes that bad decision because we failed to support them, because we failed to get them the help they needed. So give this benefit to all of us so that those who come behind will again have the inspiration, have the knowledge that, oh, we're going to recognize that line of duty death because you pulled the plug years later. That acknowledgement will itself help 30 other people who were thinking about it, but didn't because they recognized that somebody was taken care of too late, if that makes any sense. So thank you for the question, and we hope again for a favorable report for both these bills.
Very much. Are there any other questions for Mr. Walker or Mr. Burke here? Great, thank you very much. That concludes the bill hearing for House Bill 1389. Committee will now move on to House Bill 1091. Delegate Vogel. Committee will actually go on to House Bill 1313, Delegate Anderson. Law enforcement officers, pension systems membership, 911 specialist.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Thanks. Family, how y'all doing? Everybody good? All right. For the record, Delegate Carl Anderson Jr., AKA Delegate Cornbread, AKA Ray Gibson, AKA the Rebirth of Smooth, is here with you today for House Bill 1313, which is a great bill. I think, in my opinion, it allows 911 specialists to join LEOPS, and it's up to the local governing body to decide to do that. There's no state effect whatsoever, no fiscal note on the state level. And as you heard earlier, these folks are on the first line. They take the phone calls. They deal with all the trauma and the just total mess of what happens on the other side of a phone call. And so I think that they deserve the same abilities to have the same retirement as our more traditional law enforcement officers. I know that there was support from MACO. There's support from, let's see, MACO supports the Fire EMS Coalition supports it, local governments throughout the state. And I know there is some opposition, and I know that deals with something related to the IRS. So we can look to see what we can do to kind of put these pieces together. So that's about it.
Should Delegate Anderson, are there any questions for the bill sponsor regarding the bill? Okay, thank you very much. We have for favorable testimony, Kevin Canale with the Maryland Association of Counties.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Kevin Canali here on behalf of the Maryland Association of Counties in support of this bill. The bill sponsor did a great job explaining the bill. I'll just say that we view this as a very, very good recruiting and retention tool for 911 specialists for counties that have LEOPs and they choose to add this benefit. It's a win-win. So we'd ask for a favorable report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Canali. Are there any questions for Mr. Canali on the bill? Great. Thank you very much. And we also have one more witness who unfortunately is not here at this moment. She's only in the Senate, so she won't be testifying today. So that concludes the bill hearing for House Bill 1313. The committee will now move on to House Bill 1091. Delegate Vogel, Public Safety Reproductive Health Care Clinic Security Grant Program Establishment Protecting Reproductive Health Care Clinics Act. Delegate Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, and hello, committee, and apologies. We are in committee across the hall as well and was a little late. What HB 1091 does is establish a grant program in the office of the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention and Policy to provide security grant funding for reproductive health centers across the state of Maryland. We recognize that there has been an escalation in violence and threats facing our reproductive health care centers across the state and really across the country. And we're following in the footsteps of other states, including California and New York, that have established these grant programs. I will note this sets may appropriate $500,000 in this budget for this fund. We are working very closely on it with independent abortion clinics across the state, as well as Planned Parenthood. With that, I urge a favorable report on House Bill 1091. And if it's okay with you, Mr. Vice Chair, I'll turn it over to my panel.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Kelly Marks. As a member of the Washington Area Clinic Defense Task Force and active clinic escort at the Planned Parenthood in downtown Baltimore, I'm here to testify in support of HB 1091. Funding for greater security at clinics across the state is of vital importance. Being physically present at clinics can be very dangerous and anxiety-inducing for patients, escorts, and staff members. At our clinic alone, I have personally witnessed anti-choice protesters follow patients and providers to their vehicles, take photos of license plates and individuals' faces, verbally abuse patients, staff, and volunteers, and become very physically aggressive. Police are frequently called, which further disrupts the ability of our patients to access vital healthcare services such as abortions, STI screenings, gender affirming care, and HIV services. And the very presence of antis intimidates and scares patients away from seeking the services they have the legal right to pursue. As abortion grows increasingly restricted across the country, Maryland will continue to receive an influx of patients from other states seeking reproductive health care. After the fall of Roe, 2 new independent abortion clinics have opened in Maryland. With the increase in patient traffic and number of clinics operating in the state, the need to provide funding for additional security has also increased. As unpaid clinic escorts and volunteers, we show up in any weather, for any patient under any circumstances, fully prepared to be verbally harassed and physically intimidated at every single shift, because without adequate escort coverage, patients are left to fend for themselves against the antis who intentionally harass and frighten them. As clinic escorts, we volunteer in order to protect the right to bodily autonomy for all across the state, but we can't do this alone. Patients, providers, and volunteers really need your help. You have been presented with the rare opportunity to offer aid to individuals who may be at the most vulnerable point in their lives. Please do not neglect the chance to do so. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Good afternoon, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Melanie Shapiro. I'm the Public Policy Director with the Maryland Network Against Domestic Violence. We're the federally recognized state domestic violence coalition here in support of House Bill 1091. Since the Supreme Court decision in Dobbs, the National Domestic Violence Hotline calls have doubled regarding reproductive coercion. In this context, reproductive coercion could look like pregnancy pressure. Either somebody was raped and they are now pregnant, or they could have been raped and wish to terminate a pregnancy, or a whole host of situations related to that. And in 6 to 22%, women terminate their pregnancies because they're in an abusive relationship. And 2.1 million women in the United States have become pregnant as a result of a rape by an intimate partner. The access to reproductive health care is of utmost importance to victims of domestic violence. The ability to safely access that care, and this grant would provide some of the security measures and security structures needed at the clinics so that people who are already experiencing so much violence and abuse at home can access reproductive health care in a safe and secure environment. So for all of those reasons, we urge a favorable report on House Bill 1091.
Thank you very much to the bill sponsor and to Mr. Shapiro and also Ms. Marks. Are there any questions from members of the committee? We also have Ms. Pam Casemeyer listed on here. Ms. Pam Casemeyer listed here. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We also have testimony unfavorable from Laura Boakley. Laura Boakley here.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Laura Bogley, Executive Director of Maryland Right to Life, and on behalf of our Board of Directors, we strongly object to this bill that would appropriate another $500,000 in public grant funds to further subsidize the multi-billion-dollar abortion industry, diverting public funds from legitimate reproductive health care services. This bill is based on a false premise that abortion facilities in Maryland are facing increased threats of violence from pro-life advocates and therefore require millions more in taxpayer subsidy to enhance abortion facility security. This claim is not supported by state-specific evidence. It's also in addition to at least another related bill that is an additional $1 million in funding for abortion clinics starting in 2025. But in Maryland, the truth is that nearly 3 in 4 women say they felt pressured into their abortion, and that pro-abortion extremists have committed escalating acts of violence and vandalism against pro-life citizens and pregnancy resource centers since the Supreme Court's 2022 reversal of Roe v. Wade. At least 6 physical assaults against pro-life citizens who are praying outside of abortion clinics have occurred, and 3 acts of vandalism against pregnancy resource centers have been reported and documented to police in Maryland since 2022. No arrests have been made in those cases, however, and these organizations have had to cover their own costs to enhance their security measures. In 2022, FBI Director Christopher Wray testified before Congress that roughly 70% of the cases of abortion-related violence or threats of violence they were investigating were perpetrated by pro-abortion assailants against pro-life victims. Again, 70% of violence by pro-abortion extremists. At least 100 pregnancy resource centers and pro-life groups nationwide have been attacked and vandalized by pro-abortion extremists. For these reasons, we respectfully urge your unfavorable report on this bill. But if you choose to enact the bill, we ask that you address the violence with impartiality and award grants to pregnancy resource centers as well. And there was an amendment put in the Senate to exclude pregnancy resource centers. I don't know if you'll see that same amendment here in the House. Thank you for your time and consideration today.
Are there any questions from members of the committee for Ms. Bogley? Okay, thank you very much. That concludes the bill hearing for House Bill 1091. The committee will now move on to House Bill 1305, Washington County Delegation, State Personnel, Correctional Services, Employee Pay and Benefits.
Thank you, Chairman Chang and honorable members of the Appropriations Committee. I'm Delegate Wyville. Please present House Bill 1305. Washington County is a location for a large prison complex. Last fall, the delegation members met with lieutenants, captains, majors, and case management supervisors at their request. Traditionally, these classifications receive the same pay increases and benefits afforded to other correctional officers within the complex. This policy ceased apparently in the final 2 years of the Hogan administration. This bill would restore that long-standing practice regarding pay increases and also make these classifications eligible for the retention and longevity benefit program as they once were. As a result of changes in these practices, some of those in these classifications have actually asked for voluntary demotions to previously held positions as they are finding themselves earning less subsequent to being promoted. The state is still experiencing huge shortages in staffing, and employees are still being mandated overtime at our correctional facilities. Those employees who are eligible to do so are choosing retirement, even though they would make an alternative decision had these programs continued to be made available to them. I simply ask that you recognize the great work that these individuals perform on a daily basis on behalf of our public safety, and I ask for a favorable report on House Bill 1305.
Thank you to the bill sponsor for presenting the bill. Are there any questions from members of the committee for the bill sponsor? Delegate Christ?
Yeah, I do. It looks like we had passed House Bill 260 and then the Senate passed Senate Bill 192 that would include these folks in the collective bargaining process. So if I would assume that they're both going to cross over and pass and they'll be signed on by the governor, that their pay increases will be automatic.
No, they wouldn't necessarily be automatic. They'd have to be negotiated. But when we met with these folks, this was their request. And I guess I would wonder, I mean, is it the legislature's intent to force folks to unionize to get pay and benefits, which they were used to be entitled?
Well, it's not, but one of the questions, just to be consistent, one of the questions I always ask is that it should be negotiated. And oftentimes when there's negotiations happen and both sides make concessions, oftentimes on the union side or on the labor side, those concessions aren't really concessions because they come to the General Assembly to get what they want. And I just want to make sure that that's not exactly happening here. And it won't happen here. I would rather have a good faith negotiation between both parties and then they come to an agreement. And then once they sign that document, that's a good faith, compromise that was made between both parties, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the practice that they're asking for is fairly similar. I used to be on the Board of County Commissioners and the teachers unions would often negotiate their salary, benefits, pay packages, and then the administrators and supervisors would then follow up with discussion and usually probably 95% of the time they were granted those benefits that were negotiated by the union. And I think that's what our officers here are asking for, is the same consideration.
Are there any other questions from members of the committee? Great, thank you very much. That concludes the bill hearing for House Bill 1305. The committee will now move on to House Bill 1402. Montgomery County Delegation, Montgomery County State's Attorney's Office Personnel Application of County Personnel Laws and Collective Bargaining, MC 1224. Delegate Spiegel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, distinguished colleagues. For the record, Delegate Ryan Spiegel, on behalf of the Montgomery County Delegation, presenting House Bill 1402, also known as Local Bill MC 1224. This bill would apply certain county personnel laws and collective bargaining rights to the employees of the Montgomery County State's Attorney's Office. The Montgomery County Delegation voted unanimously to support it as amended, and I'd ask for a favorable report, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the bill sponsor on this bill? Okay, great. Thank you very much. And so we have Lisa Blackwell listed. If Lisa Blackwell would come up and for us testimony.
Good afternoon. First of all, thank you to the Montgomery County Senate and delegation for unanimously supporting this bill. Last year, a group of employees from the Montgomery County State's Attorney's Office came to our union, McGeo, to discuss the prospect of securing collective bargaining rights. Their compelling reason for their interest in collective bargaining was to secure a voice in their workplace via terms and conditions of their employment, and a seat at the table during the county's budget process. HB 1402 would give them that voice and that seat at the table. This legislation, as you know, would establish a legal right for the employees of the state's attorney's office to decide through a prescribed process whether they wish to be represented by a labor union and engage in collective bargaining. To be heard in life is important. For an employee to be heard at work is even more important. Which is why HB 1402 is so vital to employees, the employees at the state's attorney's office. So again, we urge you for a favorable review. Thank you.
Much. Are there any questions from the committee for a witness? Great. Thank you very much. That concludes the bill hearing. The committee will now move on to House Bill Delegate Grammer or Delegate Riley here? Delegate Riley or Delegate Grammer? House Bill 1381, education, public funded pre-kindergarten payments to private providers and building use. House Bill 1381. Do we have anybody for this? Which bill are you here for, sir? Sure, come on up. Okay, this is House Bill 1381. Okay, House Bill 1381. Are you Lawrence Richardson?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you very much. Lawrence A. Richardson Jr. On behalf of Hartford County Government, Hartford County Executive. Drop my pen. Just very briefly, I know Delegate Riley is on her way, so she'll be able to give you a more detailed explanation for the basis of the bill. We're here in support of this bill. And you should have a letter in your file from the county executive, also noting the county executive's support for this. I mean, clearly, one of the things that this bill will definitely do, it's going to, as it's written now, the bill will include a privately funded pre-K into the state share. Where we see a benefit in this is that this definitely provides a much needed flexibility on the pre-classroom space as well. I know it does provide funding, which is very critical to us. But also more importantly, it's going to allow for spacing. Right now, based on a staff study that was presented to the Hartford County Board of Ed, we are probably looking in Hartford County at 2,579 more pre-K students by the time we get to the end of blueprint, which is a lot of space. What this will allow as well in the end of the latter part of the bill also will allow the use of facilities such as county government space that we have, hospital space. We have Upper Chesapeake, which has a brand new facility, which has indicated they could have potential space for us. It keeps us from having to purchase land, expand buildings. It can save on the cost. The funding mechanism in here as well can assist the counties in the amount of monies that need to be expended and need to go out. We think this bill can help provide a better product, a better location, and a better educational environment for our students, for our pre-K students. And with that, we would respectfully request I present you the chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richardson, and Mr. Richardson explained the bill very well, Madam Delegate. So are there any questions or members of the committee? Okay, that concludes the bill hearing for House Bill. Delegate Metzger.
Thank you, Delegate, for bringing this bill, because as I look at it, we're going to be needing a lot of space throughout the state for seats. Is this a statewide and enabling, or is it just for Hartford County?
Yes, thank you. Can I answer the question?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, thank you. Yes, this is a statewide bill. And there's a lot of jurisdictions that, feel exactly the same way that we feel, that we need to get the private sector. I know you have my written testimony and the testimony of the public schools and the county executives in my jurisdiction. And they express, their highlights of the need for a classroom space. So that was the, essence of developing the bill. And I think this, does it in a very safe way. We still go through the 3-tier system. What it does do is changes the allocation to an average enrollment opposed to pre-person just for K3 and K4, so that those private providers can have the access to payment within a 30-day period, so that they're have stability. Currently, they're not jumping on board. I know the county sent additional data showing that, and showing how many seats that all the schools are going to need and the additional classrooms. So I remember during the 3 years of doing the blueprint that, we were talking about, if this is going to work, we need to have that private partnership with our pre-Ks, with our daycares. because they have the space. And so
Have they negotiated any kind of price, or is that per building, per space?
the space, they still go through the way the calculations of the tier 1,
Right,
tier 2, tier 3 for low income at no cost. But what they did do is they changed to make it into, to make it so they follow new guidelines that start in 2025 by taking the average number of the tier 1 children enrolled in the prior 3 years plus tier 2 children under the original calculation. And that's how they come up with an average of a classroom.
Thank you, because I know that Anne Arundel County, I believe I just heard this yesterday, needs 18,000 seats.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it is definitely a need, and hopefully this committee would look through it. And if it has some good ideas in it, maybe you could put it in another bill. That's fine, but we just have to, to get this done. So thank you very much. And I hope the committee looks at it and gives us a favor report.
Delegate McCaskill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for bringing this bill. So I'm curious with this bill to help me differentiate Pillar 1 that's already in the blueprint to include private providers.
Yes, this bill private providers are in there, as you say. This bill is adding, it's public, and they're adding the private providers just due to the fact that we don't have the capital budget to build all the additional classrooms in our schools. So that's why the second part of the bill was saying, in the current bill, it already, under the blueprint, it already added community centers, senior centers, and two other things, senior centers and community centers. So what we're doing, we thought the second phase of the bill basically adds government spaces and hospitals, because some of our jurisdictions have government space that's not being leased or not being used. So we're hoping that we could use those facilities, and the commission will actually, they can apply and they can get a grant under that current program to maybe adapt to the space, but not have to have all the regulations that the current rooms do in our current public schools. Because again, that would be a high expense and a lot of capital monies that we don't have. So this is just kind of a tool in a toolbox to reduce spending, which, we're having issues now, and give us space.
Okay, maybe we could follow up offline. I'm curious if you've brought any parts of this bill to Ways and Means, because I know that there's a whole package plan to help support Pillar 1 and private providers for the blueprint. And I'm just curious about some of the redundancy that may be here, maybe double dipping in the fiscal. So I just have some concerns about that.
Okay, I'm willing to, talk with them. It's just that when I got my hearing notice, it was just to appropriation. So that's why I'm here, but I'll be happy to talk to, to the Ways and Means chair.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from members of the committee for the bill sponsor and panel? Delegate McComas.
Chair, just a quick question, if they used to have a daycare center at the Bel Air High School, and I was wondering, and I don't know if it still exists, but in other words, the way you have government facilities, would that qualify for some of the schools to be able to, if there's room and to have the kindergarten, pre-kindergarten?
Yes, thank you, Delegate McComas, for that. Are you talking about one that's currently in the school?
Well,
or outside?
I don't know. I just know the lady that had retired that was the person that took care of the daycare center. But I'm thinking if I don't know if they're still using it, like it was Bel Air High School, and they had things for the kids to play on and everything, and that would be if it was no longer being used for daycare, if it could be used for kindergarten.
Well, what this bill allows, if someone feels if they're outside of the school system, then what this bill would allow, then they would apply, and then that would go through your local school boards to decide whether that will be an appropriate facility for this program. So it goes through that process. Then they have the opportunity to apply for the grant. And then they would work together, but the responsibility of the facility and the operation would not fall on, which is a great caveat of it as well, would not fall directly under the school system, but it would be between the owner of the property, the building per se, and they would have a contract for the space.
So essentially, contract with the Board of Education.
Yeah, ultimately saying, yes, we agree that this is going to be a location that we're going to use, but then the contract is between the building owner and the private provider.
Thank you very much. Any other
Thank you.
questions from members of the committee? Okay, that concludes the bill hearing for House Bill 1381. Committee will now move on to the last bill this afternoon, which is House Bill 670, Delegate Grammar, State Prescription Drug Benefits Retirement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd welcome up whoever else you would want to bring up, but I'd beg your mercy. Sarah Mastrodonardi from the Maryland State Police Alumni Association tried to sign up and she had some problems. If she'd be permitted to speak. She's coming up. With your permission, I'll get started. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. For the record, Delegate Robin Grammer here to present House Bill 670. House Bill 670 restores the prescription drug benefit in the State Employee and Retiree Health and Welfare Benefits Program to those employed prior to July 1st, 2011. This is a constituent request, but one that is supported by thousands of Marylanders. Maryland retirees who lost coverage under the state's prescription drug benefit alterations feel they were promised coverage that was taken from them. Thousands of Marylanders gave their youth in service to the state for a benefit they thought would be there and that they would come to rely on. I would like to share a story that closely resembles the predicament faced by many Marylanders who are suffering from the decision of this body to revoke coverage. Ms. Pullen took nearly a 50% pay cut to leave the private sector and work for the state. She did so for the benefits package in planning for her retirement. She retired in 2023 and for coverage, had to sign up for Medicare Parts A and B. She will be required to find a Medicare Part D drug plan that covers the current prescription drugs of her and her husband. Her preliminary cost analysis shows the astronomical out-of-pocket costs she will bear, and even with the so-called cap, next year she will likely forgo some of her most needed prescription drugs due to the lack of coverage and financial hardship. With this decision, we are forcing the most vulnerable Marylanders, those who are most subject to the pressures of inflation, those on fixed incomes, to go without prescription coverage during the most vulnerable years of their lives. We should honor our promise and we should protect the vulnerable and we should restore the coverage to those who fully expected it to be there. Be happy to take questions and I'd ask for a favorable on House Bill 670.
Sir.
Thank you, Delegate. Good to be with you.
Good to see you.
All right. Now, witness, is this your sponsor panel or?
No, there's more.
I got you. I'm going to call the witnesses. I'm about to call them right now. Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Pam Case, let's see. Nope, I'm back on Delegate Vogel's bill. Let me just catch up here. Ron Bailey, Josephine Ball, Cindy Smalls, Deborah Hill. Whoever gets to the table first can start to testify. Okay, about 4 witnesses. I got 4 folks. Whoever wants to start, welcome. You can start. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the Appropriation Committee. My name is Cindy Smalls, representing ASME. I'm here today testifying in favor of HB 670. I think the delegate kind of laid out the situation and the need for this bill. While it doesn't fix everything, we believe that it does help right a wrong for those who've already currently retired, to help put their mind at ease around moving them off of the state plan. And so I am going to say me too and give it to others, but ask for a favorable report on this. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and the committee.
My name is Ron Bailey. I served as a correctional officer for the state for over 20 years in several state prisons, retiring as a captain. I urge you to support House Bill 670, which will restore access to the state's prescription plan for state retirees that were hired before 2011. Thousands and current former state employees depends upon your action. Please try to put yourself in their place. The state employees, most of them bring home an average of $1,541 per month. Even with Social Security, their income is barely enough to meet basic needs for food, housing. The state's prescription plan has been our lifeline. With Medicare Part D, retirees will for the first time face deductibles since there are none in the state's plans. Deductibles mean paying the full cost of medicine until the deductible is met. Even plans with little or no deductibles may have higher copays and premiums than the state's plan. On the state's plan, once my wife and I have spent $1,500 on medicine, we've reached our out-of-pocket maximum. However, with Medicare Part D, each one of us would need to spend $2,000 for medicine before we could reach the out-of-pocket maximum, the difference of $2,500. That becomes a huge problem. With the copays in Medicare Part D, this is especially true for heart and cancer medicine since newer ones are being developed all the time. Some of these medicines are not on the formulary and a person is required to pay the full costs. The development of prescription drugs has greatly reduced other medical costs, including hospitalization. But if we can't afford to buy them, you can be sure that more people will be sick, more people will be in the hospital, and more people will die. The state's budget is a reflection of the priorities of our state. The fact that the legislature refuses to pay our medicines once we retire means that we are not a priority. I urge you to make us a priority. Support House Bill 670. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, most honorable delegates of the Appropriations Committee and all interested parties and guests. Sarah Mastronardi, I'm a retired first sergeant with the Maryland State Police, and I'm president of the State Police Alumni Association. I realize this dilemma was not caused by Governor Moore or the delegates in this room, but it did happen.
I'm sorry, I don't see you on the witness list. So sorry.
No, sir.
Did you sign up to testify?
Yes, sir, I did sign up.
Oh, you're here. We'll give you a minute, okay?
Thank
Since
you.
you're here. Thank you.
Thank you. But it happened. It appears that no action plan was put in place until Senate Bill 946, and those provisions to assist, educate, and train our seniors have not been put in place to assist the over 50,000 retirees affected by the loss of the prescription drug plan. And open enrollment is just 7 months away. Our retirees, many in their 80s, are not prepared for this. Not only are many not technology savvy, but many have physical impairments that will burden them from obtaining the best plan. Even I received 3 to 4 calls a day from telemarketing groups trying to sell Medicare Advantage programs. And that oxymoron is that there is no advantage, only more money out of pocket that many of our retirees do not have. Some of our retirees are getting $113 a month Social Security check and a monthly retirement check under poverty level. Our retirees hired before 1987 were not offered or paid into Social Security. This unique, most vulnerable group of state retirees are the ones that are most adversely affected by the loss of the prescription drug plan. Many were told as a police officer, you won't live to have Social Security. And the employer offered a lower salary that was often compensated with good benefits that concluded this prescription drug plan. I believe we could identify the limited group of retirees that retain their prescription drug plan, and it's such a serious issue that has put many of our older seniors in panic.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank
for
you,
your
sir.
testimony. Thank you for being with us. Glad we could accommodate you. Who else is next on the panel?
Yes. Hello, my name is Deborah Hill, and I'm here on behalf of Ken Fitch, president of United We Matter, and I speak for the delayed gratification generation. This is a generation that doesn't ask for handouts or freebies. They are willing to work hard, and they're willing to work hard for everything that they want. This is the generation that you guys screwed. I have seen hundreds of state retirees sit in these chairs and tell you how devastating the elimination of prescription drug coverage would be because they're living on fixed incomes. In their eyes, I have seen tears, fear of the unknown, and bewilderment over the treatment by the very people they elected. I personally have talked about the reality of the situation. I've been coming here 6 years. They are rationing their medicine and selling their possessions so they can live just a little longer. There are thoughts of suicide. And I've watched these committees. I've watched you as you look at your watch and read your emails on your phone or God knows what on your laptops. I have seen you conveniently leave the chambers right before our bill number is called, so you won't have to be confronted by your conscience while 70 and 80-year-old state retirees beg to be grandfathered in to receive a benefit that they already earned. So I ask myself, why would these lawmakers deny life to the elderly, life to police officers who were injured in the line of duty, life to the disabled? I shake my head when I think about it, but now I know the answer. You want them to die. You want their pensions. It is a fact that as a person grows older, their body deteriorates. So in order to accomplish your goals,
Thank you so much.
you
2
have
minutes is up. Are there any
reinstituted the death
questions for these
penalty.
witnesses?
You,
2 minutes
for
is
the
up,
state,
ma'am. Your 2 minutes is up.
retire, turn 65,
Troopers,
and
moving
die
forward.
without.
2 minutes is up. Thank you so much. Are there questions for this panel? Seeing none. Thank you so much for your service to our state and being with us today. Thank you so much. The next panel will be Tammy Bresnahan, John Turrell, James Roberts.
Our Constitution guarantees life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Please, if I've called your name, come on up, and I hope that this witness does not eat into your time.
Submit a
We're very eager to hear your testimony. I'm sorry for the delay.
And members of the House Appropriations Committee, my name is Tammy Bresnahan. I am the Senior Director of Advocacy for AARP Maryland. AARP Maryland, as you know, advocates for Marylanders over the age of 50, and there are around 2 million of them and several thousand state employees, of which I am one. I started my state service in 1986 and left state in 2011 and started drawing my retirement in November. And I plan to retire from AARP in December. So this is probably my last hearing in Annapolis. As a lot of other people have said, and as you know, in 2011, this body acted to relieve state employees or to move state employees to the Medicare. I just want you to know that they believe that the state has let them down and that they really need this coverage. I know most of you know a gentleman that volunteers with us. His name is Larry Z. He was our campaign person. He has Parkinson's disease. He's a retired state trooper. He started his state service in the early 80s, and he had to retire because of Parkinson's. He did not pay into Social Security or Medicare, but he will transition when he turns 65 and will probably have that penalty with him for the rest of his life. We do know that he will, he pays already $3,000 out of pocket, even with the state benefit. So, and that was for his tremors. We want you to really think about this. And I know that people sitting behind me really have been depending on this benefit. So we ask you to issue a favorable report for House Bill 670. Thank you.
I defer to you. You want to go in? Okay. My name is James Roberts. Excuse me. Thank you, Chairman, Vice Chairman, and members of the committee. I retired after 33 years with the state, and I asked this committee to give a favorable report to HB 670. The state is concerned about its AAA bond rating, but there are ways around that. Pre-funding the OPEB trust, for instance, would have saved $6 billion in OPEB funding over the last 5 years. And this is by virtue of the DBM's own actuarial reports. But the other issue is that Medicare Part D is not equivalent to the state prescription plan. The state formulary is much more extensive than any Part D formulary. Retirees must pay full price for any drug that is not on the list. And these costs are not included in the out-of-pocket expenses cap for Medicare. Also, the state plan is not a family plan. I'm sorry, the state plan is a family plan, but Part D is not a family plan. According to, again, DBM actuarial reports, there's 22,954 spouses currently in the OPEB system. Ultimately, each of these will also have to get a separate Part D plan. I've used the Medicare comparison tool on my own prescriptions and found that for me, the costs are going to be $3,720 more in the when I move to Part D. And this is because of the uncovered drugs that I take that are not covered by any of the plans that are available, or at least in the plans that I've looked at and available in Maryland. And again, these costs would not be covered by the or not be included in the Medicare cap. We also have to think about the many, many thousands of state employees that are not retired yet, but yet were hired prior to 2011. There's different estimates on this, but roughly,
So your 2 minutes is up, so you just have to
fiscal
conclude.
note. There's about 32,000 of those. Thank you very much, and I urge that you support and report a favorable report for HB 670.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, honorable members of the committee. I am John Turrell. I'm a retired Maryland State Trooper. On behalf of myself and other retirees that are faced with this upcoming loss of coverage to our prescription plan. Well, I entered the Maryland State Police when I was 22 years old, fresh out of the United States Coast Guard, an expecting wife. I was working a night job at the time at a gas station. And the MSP was actively recruiting personnel to fill new openings. They just built the GFK Highway up in Harford County. Anyway, my wife and I are now, I'm 83, she's 80. We have some age-related medical problems. We joke with each other that if we didn't have doctors to see, we wouldn't have a social life. Anyway, all those years, we had the state of Maryland prescription plan, life insurance, not life insurance, but medical insurance. I wouldn't know how to go find anything else. You know, you ask people, I can't even go to the doctor anymore. I had the same doctor for 50 years and they came out with this new medical stuff. And I've had 3 people in the last 5 years that I don't even know them to go to medical stuff. Anyway, the Maryland State Police retirement system is not the one I'm in, connected with the US government. This means I have never, ever paid into Social Security through the state of Maryland. I wouldn't know how to go to medical Part D. You know, I don't know why we weren't grandfathered into this thing that's going on with the change of a retirement plan. We weren't even thought of, I don't think. Anyway, I live on a fixed income. And we're asking for help to secure our medical plan. I really don't know what to do. I spent my entire life working for the state of Maryland, and they said, go somewhere else and get your prescription plan. Does anybody know the answer to that? I don't know it.
Yes, or the witnesses. McComas.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to ask, probably Ms. Bresnahan is the one that might know. Has there been any, I know there's a court case and I know there's an appeal, but has the two sides kind of gotten together and said, okay, this is a problem and what can we do to fix it, as opposed to, yeah, we want everything and no, we don't have to pay because it's a contract. It's not
I know,
binding.
I know there's been legal cases, but I don't think that there's been actual negotiations because I just didn't think that it was negotiating. They were able to negotiate.
But it just seems to me that if the parties could get together, maybe they could figure out a solution here. Maybe there isn't a solution, but at least I think that should try.
Any other questions for the witnesses? Well, thank you all for your service to our state and have a great day. Thanks for sharing your testimony. Appreciate you. Mary Fry, Kathleen Miller, William Kahn. You all are here. Come on up.
Okay, I'll go first. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and the members of the committee. I'm Mary Fry and I'm a state retiree of 31 and a half years. Retirees have received emails from many of you in response to whether you would support and pass legislation to reinstate our ex-drug plan. The response we got from you are the same, such as that you are required to meet your constitutional requirement of enacting a balanced budget each year. You go on to mention the cost and the long-term liability, and it threatens the bond rating. Continuing our RX drug benefit as proposed in this bill, it will not be a long-term liability due to our age. Did you call the bond rating agency to see if the claim you are making to retirees that this is even true or valid? The state can call the bond rating agency and request an analyst to do an evaluation, and they will make a determination as to whether or not there are any potential risk or not. I spoke with Claude, who is with Fitch Rating, and he said your bond is stable. He also said your AAA bond ratings have not changed since 2015, even after you were forced to by a court order to pay our benefit from 2019 until now. Rating agencies have not downgraded your bond rating due to your unfunded liabilities to the trust. We want documentation, not speculation, regarding your claim. We have been misled before, like when it took the state 7 years to notify us about the elimination of our drug benefit. Complying with your constitutional requirement means to be truthful and fulfill the promise you made to state retirees by reinstating our drug benefit. To come here to beg for benefit we earn is criminal. I am requesting a favorable report to House Bill 670. Here's the House bill. Yeah, thank you.
Ma'am, or sir, whoever wants to go.
Oh, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm William Kahn. I retired in 2003 after 26 years with the Office of the Attorney General. You tried to help us with 2019 Senate Bill 946, but it falls short of what was needed and I believe what was intended. These programs say they will reimburse a retiree for out-of-pocket costs, but in Medicare Part D, the words out-of-pocket costs have a special meaning. They mean what a retiree pays for a drug covered by the retiree's Part D plan. If a drug is not covered, what a retiree pays for it is not considered out-of-pocket cost. And for that drug, The retiree pays the full list price. It's not subject to the state $1,500, $2,000 caps, and it will not be subject to the Medicare Part D $2,000 cap per person that goes into effect next year. This is important because the state plan wraps around Part D. So its formulary is broader, it's more comprehensive than any Part D plan. And this poses a substantial risk that a retiree's drug, especially one that's prescribed after the retiree picks a plan and enrolls, will not be covered. And in that case, as I said, the retiree pays the list price and there's no cap that applies. There's no administrative cure or help for this. The problem is in the words of the statute. And until this can be fixed, the state plan should be reinstated. Please give a favorable report to House Bill 670. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
My name is Kathleen Miller. I worked for UMBC for 20 years. Please give a favorable report for HB 670 or delay the cancellation of benefits until a fair study with retirees' input can be made. The governor says, leave no one behind. Will the governor, senators, and delegates be concerned when retirees are left behind and are faced with prohibitively expensive drug costs? Retirees are receiving letters, emails, and newsletters meant to soothe their fears about the transition to Medicare Part D. But this disingenuous correspondence is having the opposite effect. Retirees feel unheard and worry about the higher drug cost under Part D. Retirees have helped their parents or someone else and know how much their drugs cost on Part D compared to the state plan. They're worried because their legislators do not understand Part D, and certainly taking a two-part plan, Part D plus state funding, and subtracting the state funding, leaving only Part D, will cost retirees more, much more. Unless a retiree takes cheap generic drugs, their costs will go up. One expensive uncovered drug might break their budget. No one knows the future. I plan my retirement based on the promise the state made to retirees. Now, when there's no time to work and save for prescription bills, the state is reneging on the promise without regard to how it will affect retirees. The state has chosen to put other new priorities ahead of honoring the promise made to retirees. But these new priorities should come after the state fulfills its obligation to retirees. Part D combined with the 2019 Senate Bill 946 is not the answer and will leave many retirees unable to pay for their prescriptions. I will pay thousands more than I'm paying now. The Fitch agency has said the AAA bond rating is based on a state's ability to repay debt, and Maryland has always done that. Don't add this burden to retirees. Please give a favorable report for HB 670. Thank you.
For this panel. Okay, thank you all for being with us.
Thank
Good
you.
day. Jane Wolfson, Richard Norman, Donald McCord. We have an online virtual witness as well. Well, they're coming up. If there are any retirees who did not sign up to speak but are here and want to be recognized, stand up so we can recognize your presence here if you'd like. Let us know. All right.
I'll start. My name's Richard Norman. I'm a retired Maryland State Trooper. Spent 28 years of service with the state police from 1977 to 2005. I'm currently the executive director of the Maryland Trooper Association, representing 2,600 active and retired troopers, 1,500 of which are retired. The MTA supports House Bill 670. Many of our retirees retired before July 1st, 2011, which is the part of this bill, and dedicated their lives to the service of the citizens of Maryland. Many of our retirees have served citizens for over 30 years. Some of my classmates didn't because they died while serving citizens of the state of Maryland as Maryland State Troopers. Most of the Maryland Trooper Association retirees have known only the state's prescription plan, and many have believed that they were told and promised that they would retain prescription coverage for life. Many elderly retirees now fear the future of the unknown with prescription coverage. My 92-year-old mother-in-law, who has been in the state's prescription and healthcare program for over 45 years, that is all she knows. And she is scared to death to go somewhere and has no idea how to do it. And you've heard that with other testimony. This legislation would allow those who began state service prior to July 1st, 2011 to remain in the state's prescription program, to continue being covered in a system they're familiar with and with one they understand and they've been with all their lives. New employees starting July 1st, 2011 and after that have many years to plan for prescription coverage before they become Medicare eligible retirees and have to move to Medicare Part D. Retirees now 65 years of age like myself, we have 10 months. So we're asking for a favorable report for House Bill 670. Thank you.
My name is Jane Wolfson, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. In 2018, when I and thousands of other state retirees hired before 2011 first learned that our prescription benefits had been revoked 7 years earlier, we felt totally betrayed and abandoned. In 2019, the legislators responded and passed 2019 Senate Bill 946, trying to alleviate the crisis that had been imposed upon us. Unfortunately, the provisions of SB 946, which is now the law, do not alleviate the problem at all. 946 assumed that Medicare D and the state plan were similar, but as you've heard, they are very different in terms of coverage. Medications that are affordable under the state plan could become totally unaffordable on Medicare D. The promise of a cap on out-of-pocket does not help, since only costs associated with drugs covered by the formulary, the list of covered drugs for someone's selected plan, count towards their out-of-pocket. Everything else, it just comes out of your pocket. President Ferguson has said that our total costs will be lower after the switch to Medicare D. Not for me. Under the provisions of the new law, my costs will definitely be higher. I have colleagues who have worked for the state for 40 or 50 years, but who retired after January 1, 2020. Under the provisions of the new law, these retirees received nothing. I'm worried about what's going to happen to us. I know there are plans to provide life-sustaining drugs, but I'm equally concerned about drugs that preserve my quality of life, letting me live independently. When I joined the state workforce, I was promised a safe landing. I was promised medical coverage and drug coverage as a retiree. I could focus my energy on my job, which is what I did. I felt secure. I'm now coming up on 80 and my life expectancy is limited. This policy totally destroyed my safe landing. HB 670 will restore it. Please vote in favor.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Don McCord, a retired trooper from the Maryland State Police. I served 19 years before being medically retired in 1999 after being injured in the line of duty. For approximately the last 23 years, I have practiced medicine as a nationally board certified physician assistant. Today, I'm here on behalf of the Maryland State Police Alumni Association to testify in support of House Bill 670. But I felt it necessary to bring to the committee's attention circumstances that I believe that are unique to the Maryland State Police. Troopers hired before April 1986 did not pay into Social Security or the federal tax known as FICA, and we were not given an option. Because of this, we now have retirees of this era paying nearly $1,000 a month for Medicare before they have paid for their first prescription. Other retirees will be in jeopardy of paying additional out-of-pocket expenses due to insufficient Social Security retirement funds to cover their health care expenses. It should also be mentioned that a state trooper who goes on to work a second job to earn their Social Security quarters may forfeit as much as 40 to 50% of their Social Security benefit if they fail to meet the 30 years of required substantial earnings under the federal windfall elimination provision. My windfall penalty alone is in excess of $600 a month. At the end of the day, we're talking about a small, unique, and finite subset group of retirees who are in jeopardy of becoming victimized by the era in which they served and the benefits for which they had no control. please give them your support and issue a favorable report for House Bill 670. Thank
We do
you.
have one virtual witness. If you get him on. Jeff Myers. Jeff, if you are here, turn on your camera, please, and on your audio as well. All right, Jeff, are you coming on? Okay. Okay, Jeff, you're just connecting to audio, so we're gonna give you another minute or so. Maybe not quite that long, but we need you to connect to audio and get your camera on and join us here in the
I'm here.
Okay, Jeff, we can hear you, so let's just take your verbal testimony and you have 2 minutes. Welcome. There you are.
Thank you.
Great.
My name is Jeff.
Go ahead, Jeff. We hear you and we see you. Go ahead and testify, please.
Okay, I think I have it now. My name is Jeff Myers. I retired from the Office of the Attorney General in 2022 after 36 years of service, 25 years as counsel to the Maryland Department of Aging. I urge you to favorably report out HB 670 with an amendment, adding a sunset section that will have the bill expire in 2 years. You may ask why. Having served as long as I did and walked those halls as often as I did, I realized the bill as written is going nowhere. So I'm urging an amendment of a sunset provision. I also ask why there are no Democrat sponsors of this bill. The Democrats are usually the party looking out for state employees. The answer is because the administration via Assembly leadership has told the Democrats to stand down and not support this bill. Governor Moore says he's a great champion of state employees, but apparently this is only true while you're working, not when you're retired and old. This is age discrimination. Perhaps it's not Governor Moore, but just his personnel at budget and management. In any event, I urge the Democratic members of this committee not to be robots and mindlessly follow the party leaders. You owe it to these retirees to really investigate the matter. The retirees have raised some legitimate questions about the cost numbers you have been given by the administration. Please take the time to consider the issue carefully. Continue the program for a year or two to undertake this study because it is too complicated to undertake during the remainder of this session. Include the retirees in the study. There's been no negotiation, as Delegate McComas inquired about, because retirees have not been included in the quote-unquote analyses performed by DVM. Please review the written testimony that challenges and questions DVM's numbers. If you do not pass HB 670 and the program ends, it will be too late to correct the wrong that is being imposed on our retirees. No state other than Maryland has retroactively taken their retirees out of their pharmaceutical plan. Only Maryland has done this retroactively. Maryland is wrong on this. Please take the time to correct it by passing HB 670, at least with a sunset provision. Thank you for your time and your attention.
Okay, thank you for your testimony, Jeff. Any questions for the witness? Okay, thank you all. Thanks to our retirees for being with us today. Jeff, thanks for being with us. That concludes the bill hearing. Thank you.